Hi, welcome to the marketplace. My name is Daryl. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Coming up, Ghana's economy beat most analysts' forecasts, expanding by 4.2% in the first quarter of this year. We'll be hearing from the government statistician.
Growth rate since the first quarter of 2014, we saw that the services sector, in terms of current terms, that its growth rate in the first quarter of 2023 is about twice the average over the same period.
Ghana leading the agenda for African cocoa producers to establish cocoa exchange on the continent to exercise some control over the pricing of the commodity.
Price have been dictated at the New York market and then the London market. If you have, let's say, Accra or Lagos or Abidjan markets, definitely you can have more say.
On cocoa sector challenges as civil society organizations call for amendment to regulations and policies to make the industry more profitable. Thanks for being with us, everyone. Details coming up. Well, first up, Ghana's economy beat most analysts' forecasts, expanding by 4.2% in the first quarter of this year. This is compared with the 3.1% recorded during the same period. Now, according to data from the Ghana Statistical Service, Public Administration, Defense and Social Security, Health and Social Work, Education and Information Communication Technology drove the growth rate. Once again, the services sector recorded the highest growth rate of 10.1%, whilst industry contracted. Here's government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim addressing the media a while ago.
Industry sector contracted by 3.2% in the first quarter of 2023. Comparing this to the average growth rate since the first quarter of 2014, we saw that the services sector, in terms of current terms, that its growth rate in the first quarter of 2023 is about twice the average over the same period. The average for the period quarter 1 2014 to quarter 1 2023 was 4.8 compared to 10.1 that has been recorded for the first quarter of 2023. From the agriculture sector perspective, we see a variation of 0.2 percentage point as the average for the period quarter 1 2014 to quarter 1 2023 stood at 4.6% relative to 4.8 only for the first quarter of 2023, indicating a percentage point difference of 0.2%. The industry sector recorded a contraction of 3.2%, with the average for the period quarter 1 2014 to quarter 1 2023 standing at 4.0 over the period. From an oil perspective and a non-oil perspective, from the non-oil perspective, we see a marked increase in the growth rate for the first quarter of 2023 relative to the average for the period quarter 1 2014 to quarter 1 2023. The average for the period quarter 1 2014 to quarter 1 2023 stood at 4.2%, indicating a 1.3 percentage point difference between the average 4.2% and the current growth rate from a non-oil perspective, which was 5.5%.
Well, that was the government statistician, Professor Samuel Kobnenim, addressing the media, talking to us about the first quarter GDP estimates. Professor Peter Quarter is director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. He joins us on Zoom with reaction. Good afternoon to you. This is very significant. Expansion by 4.2% in the first quarter, beaten forecast by many analysts. Your analysis on the latest numbers?
Yes, we've seen quite a significant growth of 4.2%. And even if you narrow down to non-oil GDP, that grew by 5.5% compared to 2.2% recorded in the same period 2022. So it tells you things are gradually improving. But also want us to be cautious in interpreting this growth rate, in the sense that construction, for instance, declined by 6.0%, manufacturing also declined by 2.5%, hotels and restaurants declined, mining and power declined. these are critical sectors that generate the most jobs. So if those sectors are not growing, then you know the implications on employment, implications on livelihood. We saw that most of the growth was fueled by growth in services. The services sector topped, and agri also did quite well with 4.8% growth, while industry declined by 3.2%. So again, it goes to emphasize the point: manufacturing and agri are the key sectors that should grow, because they employ a greater proportion of the labor force. If those are not growing, then it calls for concern. But I must say that given what happened the last quarter of 2022 and the first quarter of 2023 are periods that we saw some uncertainty, periods that we saw some challenges, significant challenges within the Ghanaian economy. For instance, in February 1st, water was increased by 8.3%. Tariffs were increased. Water 8.3%, electricity 29.96%. So all of this fuels into manufacturing, it fuels into the real sector activities, and that will have negative effects on its growth rate. So we are not surprised to see construction decline. We are not surprised to see manufacturing decline. Hotel and restaurant also record negative growth rates.
And these determinants, they hold constant. With high utility tariffs, we've got inflation, an uptick in May. Taxes are still there. It doesn't look like there's any good news when it comes to how industry is going to fare in the next quarter, given seeing that these factors are still prevalent.
Yeah, these are major headwinds that the industry, manufacturing industry, construction, the real sector is going to face. But I must say that this also comes with some, at the back of some credibility from the IMF program. So given that there is some relative stability in the exchange rate, given that food production, we are in the season where food production will gradually pick up, as we've seen in agri, growth in agri. So I expect that despite the headwinds, there will also be some positives to tap from. The IMF program, the credibility that we see, the exchange rate stability, and the relative stability in inflation. All of this will help to mitigate the negative challenges or the severe challenges we faced in the last quarter of 2022 and the first quarter of 2023.
I'm curious to know what's happening in the services sector, which contributed the largest growth rate, particularly the subsectors such as public administration, defense and social security, health, social work, education, ICT. What do you think is happening over there? Can you explain to our audience?
Well, these are all publicly funded areas. So defense, public administration, these are mostly public sector activities, and therefore it's not a private sector activity. It's perhaps due to some investment government has made in the sector to spare growth within those subsectors. But I must say, these are not the traditional services subsector that we see fueling growth. In the past, it's been ICT, it's been financial services, and many others. Now you don't find them, those key areas driving the growth. It's rather public administration, health, and other public services.
Right, and so let's head back to the challenges facing industry and what the way forward is. We've talked about the stumbling blocks. We've talked about the challenges. What can be done right now to get industry to recover from the impact of economic challenges?
Well, I think it's not just about introducing taxes. Some of the taxes, we have to look at them carefully as we try to raise revenue. We rather have to be more efficient in our tax collection. So I wouldn't expect further taxes. Then when it comes to utility tariffs, I believe there's work towards ensuring some efficiency within the sector, the losses and all that happening there, so that tariffs, we don't necessarily have to increase tariffs. Rather, if we're able to collect the ones that are due to the utility companies. That will help in maintaining tariffs rather than increasing tariffs. Industry, of course, would have to also critically assess some of its cost operations to ensure that it uses cost-efficient means of production, given all the challenges we're facing. But I must say that the relative stability in the exchange rate and some tapering off of the rising inflation, cost of living, is a sure sign to industry to tap into this and ensure that it's able to grow as we move along.
What's your...
But to also add that, growth spurs further growth. So once we've seen growth of 4.2%, it means that there will be further growth once we invest from the returns from this growth. So industries to consider the prospects and invest in strategic areas to spur further growth.
What's your anticipation for second quarter? Do you think we would be able to consolidate the gains we saw in the first quarter?
Well, all things being equal, if there are no significant surprises or shocks, we will certainly see improvement. We've seen some credibility come to play with the IMF program, exchange rate stability, some relative price stability. So I think the next quarter would certainly be much better. If you look at last quarter of 2022 and first quarter of 2023, you can see improvement. And I expect that going into second quarter or in this second quarter, some improvement, though maybe marginal, will be recorded.
Professor Peter Quarter, I appreciate your time with us this afternoon, Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. Thank you so much. Let's move on to other news. The Ghana Cocoa Board, together with other cocoa producing countries on the continent, will be establishing an African cocoa exchange to help the continent have some control over pricing of the commodity. The exchange will function as an international marketing platform for financing and trading cocoa proceeds. Chief Executive of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahen-Edu, explained the importance of the move at the opening of a stakeholders workshop on the feasibility studies for the African Cocoa Exchange.
The move is expected to give some confidence to producers over the pricing of cocoa in the world market, since Africa is the largest producer. Presently, there are only two international markets, New York and London, which makes it difficult for cocoa farmers in Africa to bargain for a better pricing. According to the Chief Executive of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahen-Edu, the outcome of the workshop on the feasibility study will help with the establishment of the exchange. He believes this will support the quest for Ghana and other African countries to have some bargaining power on cocoa pricing in the global market.
Prices have been detected at the New York market and then the London market. If you have, let's say, Accra or Lagos or Abidjan market, definitely you can have more say in the market. And that can definitely change the price regimes that we've been seeing over the years. But beside that, let me indicate that the platform will also give us the confidence, the strong confidence that we have lacked over the years. The confidence in the sense that you go into New York market, we are going to a consuming environment. And for that matter, we had little say in the market. Now, if it's based here in Africa, I believe our traders can trade properly and better for us.
The Minister of Food and Agriculture, Brian Achampong, lauded the initiative and indicated the government's support. He therefore described the establishment of the exchange as a new dawn in Africa's cocoa industry.
It could be the beginning of a new chapter in the African cocoa industry's history. We have the opportunity to change our course and revolutionize the cocoa supply chain for delivery of greater value to all actors.
All things being equal, the African Cocoa Exchange will be established this year, with Ghana making a move to host the platform.
We are going to keep the spotlight on the cocoa sector, which significantly contributes an average of 3.5% of GDP and employs about 17% of the working population in Ghana. Now, despite being one of the largest producers of cocoa worldwide, Ghana is yet to tap the full benefits of this lucrative industry because of a number of challenges. In studio with me is co-convener of the Ghana Civil Society Cocoa Platform, Obed Owusu Adai, to discuss this further. Great to have you in the studio as we talk about cocoa production here in Ghana. Tell me how you would describe the industry's performance over the years. Are we doing well with cocoa production?
Thank you for having me. So we need to look at it in two perspectives. Production as in quantity. Ghana has been doing pretty okay. Just that in a couple of years, we have actually dwindled in our productivity. I think a couple of years ago, we hit 1 million metric tons and we're all hailing, we're happy. But for the past few years, we've been producing just around 800,000 metric tons of cocoa. And this year, we spoke with the Cocoa Board and we don't seem to be on track to get the quantity that we are looking for. There are several factors that is accounting for our inability to produce the quantities that we want.
Yeah, so generally, how would you describe the industry in terms of how we are faring right now?
For the ordinary cocoa farmer with whom we associate very well with, we are not doing very well.
Why do you say that?
The ordinary cocoa farmer is so poor. My grandmother is a cocoa farmer and she's still very poor. And I'm sure many cocoa farmers in Ghana would relate to that. Averagely, no cocoa farmer is living on more than $2 a day in Ghana. Then that is the minimum money that you should be able to earn. Additionally, you realize that for a very long time, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and other cocoa producers in Africa, just as the executive director did say, we have been lagging behind because the prices have been dictated by the international market.
Yeah. Well, we just saw a story about an Africa Cocoa Exchange. Yeah. Hopefully, it would resolve some of the issues. But your platform raises concerns about legislation, regulations, and policies which are hampering the growth of the cocoa industry. Tell us about some of the issues that you're concerned about.
Thank you. One of the major issues is about cocoa price and how much goes to the cocoa farmer. Currently, per the PPRC's regulation, the cocoa farmer is to get about not less than 70% of the FOB price. And people usually don't know what goes into determining the FOB price.
Educate us.
So when there is an international market price, let's say right now it's doing a bit well, it's about over $3,000 per ton. But before they set the market price for the cocoa farmer, there are deductions that are made by Cocoa Board. Cocoa Board does spraying, mass spraying, distribution of fertilizer, and other costs that is associated to their production. They deduct all these things from it, and then they also deduct the LBC margins, those who go to the countryside to bring the cocoa beans. They pay them from it. So the money that is left, that is what they share between the cocoa farmer and government. And per the statistics, the farmer gets between 68 to 72% of that. The question we should be asking ourselves is, the other part that goes to the Cocoa Board, what happens to that money? That's a lot of money.
Have you been able to figure that out?
Not yet.
Well, we just saw a story about an African Cocoa Exchange, which is supposed to help farmers have some control over price, or producers have control over pricing. Are you confident about how this platform will help achieve that mandate, if you like?
I think it's long overdue. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and African countries, we produce cocoa, but we don't trade in cocoa. Or there's no market in Africa for trading cocoa. So it's either on the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange. If this is implemented, and implemented very well, then Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and other cocoa producing countries will have control over how we trade our cocoa beans. I think that has been one of the fundamental problems or challenges within our trading of cocoa. But the problems in the cocoa sector is not only about trading, but there is also a supply problem. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, we are overproducing, and that's a fact. This year we are getting better prices because the production is not too good, and so there is a demand for it. Beyond setting up the cocoa exchange, the African Cocoa Exchange, we also need to look at production. How do we manage our production? Should we continue to overproduce and flood the market with cocoa beans, which will pull down the price? Or do we manage between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire and see that over 3 million metric tons that we produce every year? We will look at how we manage that. This will require regulation. This will require reorienting the cocoa sector, which we believe Cocoa Board and stakeholders need to start discussing it. There need to be a lot more upstream processing of cocoa beans. Ghana doesn't process beans. Only a few chocolate companies are operating in Ghana, and most of the things they produce even go to the export market.
One of the reasons Cocoa Board was established to help in the creation of these, if you like, industries, so that we can process the cocoa. You seem generally not impressed with the work that Cocoa Board is doing. Maybe it's an exaggeration, but what are your concerns about how Cocoa Board is carrying out this work?
Unfortunately, I won't say we don't seem impressed, but we think Cocoa Board can do more. They are trying, but they are working with a law that was passed in 1981, and I think amended somewhere in 1981. The law makes certain provisions that overly give too much power to the Cocoa Board when it comes to processing. For example, if you're a cocoa farmer in Ghana and you produce your own cocoa beans, you cannot put value on your beans. Let's juxtapose that to a plantain farmer. A plantain farmer, you can go to your plantain farm, cut your plantain, and process it to plantain chips and other things. And nobody will question you. But with cocoa, when you have produced your beans, you have dried it, you cannot process it. And these are some of the laws that is hindering ability of the downstream processing of beans. We think there should be a lot that Cocoa Board should be doing, and it should start from reorienting and retooling the legislative framework governing cocoa production in Ghana.
Yeah, we are working the lines to speak with a farmer, Letitia Yankee. I bet she's also a member of your platform, to hear from the farmers and the challenges that they are facing. But there's this concern that farmers have limited or no voice at all when it comes to pricing of cocoa beans, and why is that the case?
Interestingly, there is the PPRC, which should have farmers' representation, but the farmers' representation there are coming from the cocoa share, which is made up of past cocoa farmers, best cocoa farmers. Annually, there's a national best cocoa farmer. So that group, they form that kind of a very, very secluded association. Directly on the ground, the farmers on the ground who are actually doing the farming every day, they don't seem to have any direct representation. So when we say they don't have representation, it's not like there's no farmer, but those farmers are aristocrats, high-level farmers who are there. Most of them don't even go to the farm themselves.
Not the ordinary farmer.
Not the ordinary farmer.
All the hard work.
Exactly, and there is no feedback mechanism. When they go to the PPRC meetings, the discussions that happen, how do they transmit that to the ordinary cocoa farmer? There's no pathway for that to happen.
Let's talk about tax regulations, because it's one of the key issues that you raise as well. What are your concerns with that?
So when I began the argument, I was saying that 70%, averagely 70% of the FOB price goes to the farmer, and 30%. So on that 30%, there is import taxes and all those taxes that government takes from the farmer. We don't particularly have a problem with the tax, but what do we do with the taxes that we take? Every year, Cocoa Board goes to the money market to borrow, to buy cocoa beans. But for a very long time, we've been taxing the cocoa farmer to the extent that right now, the Ghanaian cocoa farmer is poor, and Ghana cocoa farmer is only getting 800 cedis per bag. Go to our neighbors. Ivory Coast, the average cocoa farmer is getting about 1,500 cedis equivalent per bag. In Togo, they are doing around 1,350 Ghana cedis equivalent. So you realize that the Ghana cocoa farmer is poor, and he's poor because there is a lot of taxes that the Cocoa Board is taking from them. There are all these projects and programs Cocoa Board is running with the taxes they take from cocoa that the IMF report is saying that they should even get themselves out of it. Cocoa roasts and other things that they are doing, which they are taxing the cocoa farmer to fund. And we are saying that the cocoa farmer needs to be able to benefit from cocoa that he is farming. Right. And although we understand that it's a national commodity, people need to benefit from it. But the most important person is the cocoa farmer. He needs to benefit.
And that's why the farmers are more likely to smuggle their products that produce to other countries or give up their farms for illegal mining, right? Exactly.
And early this year, that problem came up. There were a lot of cocoa beans that were intercepted in the Togo border and then in the Ivorian border. Ghanaians are taking their beans to Ivory Coast and to Togo. If the price on the local market is not good, that is market forces. They will find a way to smuggle it outside. And we just came from the Western region where farmers are giving their lands to illegal miners. Luckily for us, we went to the executive.
Very serious.
Yeah, we went to the executive director of the Ghana Cocoa Initiative, and he saw it firsthand. And we spoke with farmers. They are giving their lands to illegal miners.
Well, let's talk about solutions. You're seeking, I heard you talk about legislation. You're seeking amendments to that. You're seeking amendments to the tax regulations as well. Tell us about that.
Great. So we are saying that currently there are a lot of issues that are happening within the cocoa space that require a multi-stakeholder approach to dealing with. We are not just calling for a legal review. We are saying that let's begin to talk. Let's have consensus. Let's table the issues that needs to be revised or we need to reform, and let's have conversation on it. Let's start from there. When we start from there, the issues of legal problems, the policy inaccuracies and all that will come up, and then we can find a solution to it. Again, we are saying that the cocoa farmer doesn't deserve to be overtaxed. I've been to the cocoa board offices, and you realize that there are hundreds of workers, hundreds of thousands of workers there who are taking a lot of money. But the cocoa farmer with whom they are getting the money from, he remains poor in the village. So what is the incentive for them to continue doing the cocoa? They would rather sell it to the oil palm producer, or they will sell it to, they'll convert it to oil palm or convert it to rubber. That has started happening. In the Western region, people are converting their farms to oil palm. They are converting it to rubber. If we are not careful, cocoa, which has become the backbone of Ghana's economy for a very long time. Remember when we were waiting for the IMF conversation, we were all waiting for the syndicated loan, cocoa syndicated loan to come in to solve problems. If we are not careful, we are going to lose that opportunity.
Right. Have the conversations begun with the various stakeholders?
Not yet, but we are hoping that Cocoa Board and the private sector will realize the need to begin the conversation. Under the auspices of the EU, there was this sustainable cocoa dialogue that started, but it got to a point we've not really continued the conversation. I think that was a great entry point, that we get the EU, we get the other developing partners to come together and support in creating that multi-stakeholder platform where stakeholders will engage.
Obed also Adai, co-convener of the Ghana Civil Society Cocoa Platform. I appreciate your time with us. Let's have a conversation soon. Hopefully things will be much better. And that's the marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. There is more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. There you go. Affix and bank loans to be exempted from debt restructuring. You can read more about that, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl. We will be back same time tomorrow.